Hi everybody and welcome back to my channel. It's Russell with Ink and Paper Blog and welcome to my first official bookshelf tour. This is going to take a few videos. It's going to be done in a few parts and we're going to splice them and dice them so you get an idea of what are on all of these bookshelves that sit behind me in every video that I do for you. So let's get started with part one. So obviously I cannot talk to you about every book that is on all these shelves. That video would take forever and no one wants that. So what I thought I would do is I would just pull a couple of the books from the shelves and explain to you maybe not what the book is about, but why they actually are remaining on my shelves and why they are important to me. We're going to start over here at the beginning with Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe. I'm hoping I say that right. I apologize. Now, I read this book when I started college. It was in a introductory world literature class. And I just remember that when I finished this novel, I was in love. I was in love with the author. I was in love with the story. And it just sort of reasserted for me the reason why I was going to be a literature major. One, I had never read this book before, and to be introduced to him in my freshman year of college was really just one of those moments, those aha moments of being a book reader. And this book has been on my shelves now. It's been a while since I graduated college. We're not talking about how long, but everywhere I go, it goes with me. And every time I see it, it reminds me of why I love literature and every book on these shelves. We're gonna go on down now to, I'm going to try to put these back, guys, and I apologize, it's going to be a bit awkward. We're going to go back down to a little book, actually, that is called The 21 Balloons, and this was written by William Pène de Bois. The reason this is on my shelves is years ago I started reporting to a boss at my work, and he was not a reader. And when we started to work together, he sort of explained to me that he had one book that he read when he was a child, and he wound up giving me that book for Christmas one year. This is a story of a man who just wants to get away from the world, so ties 21 balloons to this craft to fly across the Atlantic Ocean, and unfortunately it does not go as well as he expected. I will always remember this and have fond memories for that boss, and also fond memories that he thought to share with me the book that he liked so much as a child. The next book I want to talk to you about that's on my shelf is mainly because it reminds me of one of my really good friends, and that is Michael Kindness over at, well, he used to be of Books of the Nightstand fame. I remember Books of the Nightstand, Michael Kindness and Ann Kingman introduced me to so many of my bookish friends. And Any Human Heart by William Boyd is Michael Kindness's favorite book of all time. And I remember not wanting to read it for a long time because I didn't want to dislike it because I so like Michael. But when I read this book, it blew me away. And everyone I know knew I would like it, told me I would like it, and told me to go ahead and read it. And when I did, I fell in love with it. And it stays on my shelf, and every time I think about it, I think about Michael Kindness and it puts a smile on my face. The last book in this section that I'm going to tell you about is just one of my favorite books of all time, and that is The Amazing Adventures of Kavalier and Clay by Michael Chabon. This doesn't seem like a book that would be a Russell book, a story about two men writing a comic book in New York City, but this book blew my mind. It is absolutely a chunkster, flew through it, and it introduced me to Michael Chabon and all of the books that he has written, and this is one that just absolutely is in my top 10 favorite reads of all time. I recommend it to so many people, and I love this cover. I think this cover is absolutely fantastic. It won the Pulitzer and so many other amazing things, and it is so, so good. If you have not read it, please pick it up. I know you will love it. What we're going to do next, guys, is I'm going to move down so that we can get to the next part of the shelf. I'll see you in a minute. Hey guys, so as I told you, about 90% of the books on these shelves I have read. But right now I'm going to tell you about a book I haven't read. And that is, let me stretch here and grab it, Bats of the Republic by Zachary Thomas Dodson. I bought this book because it is absolutely gorgeous. There are so many interesting things about it, amazing illustrations, and these end papers. Oh my gosh. Loved this book when I saw it in the store. I thought it sounded fantastic, but it weighs 100,000 pounds. It is so heavy that I have never been able to want to pick it up and read it and take it places with me. But it stays on my shelf because I do know I want to read it, and I think it's absolutely beautiful. The next book I want to tell you about is a book that reminds me, I'm going to have to stretch for a minute again, of my friend Emily. Now, Emily was my best friend in college. We are still very, very close. She was a history major and probably one of the smartest people that I have ever met in my entire life. And she gave me a copy of Founding Brothers by Joseph J. Ellis, The Revolutionary Generation. And this was a collection of essays by Ellis that wound up going on to win the Pulitzer, I believe, about the Founding Fathers. And it taught me so much stuff that I didn't know about that time in history, but it's so readable. And every time I see it on my shelf, I think of my friend Emily. I think about how amazing it was, how great our friendship is. She's one of those friends that you may not see or talk to, but the minute you run into them, it's like you guys have been talking every day for a year. And this book and this history, this time in history, totally reminds me of her. Speaking of books that remind me of people, we can't pass up Jane Steele by Lyndsay Faye without talking about Joss over at Squibbles Reads. I know it's been a while since she put up a video. I know that we all miss her greatly and we wish her the best with her little one, but she's the reason that I have this book on my shelves. This is her favorite book of all time. A mixture of Jane Eyre meets Dexter. It's a fun sort of romp of a woman who goes around in Victorian England taking care of people that need to be taken care of. It was fun. It reminds me of Joss and just the amazing time that we always have together when we're hanging out. And it's really fun. If you guys haven't read it, I highly recommend that. Okay, last but not least on this top shelf, I thought I would tell you about a book that I got and I had and I didn't think I would ever read. And that is Here in Berlin by Cristina Garcia. This was when I was a member of Page Habit, the book box service. And this book came and I just didn't really think that it spoke to me. But it's one of those things where you misjudge a book by its cover and then you read it and you absolutely love it. Sort of a collection of interconnected short stories that take place all around and about the idea of the city of Berlin. I absolutely thought this book was so much fun to read, and I remember really regretting that I hadn't read it sooner. And I am so glad that I did, and I really recommend it to a lot of people. She's a local author. She has signed copies in East Bay Booksellers in Oakland if you are looking to go get one. And I really, really enjoyed this book, and I didn't think I was going to. So all those books that surprise you, they wind up on your shelves for a long time too. So I'm going to move to the other shelf and other side, and I'll see you in a moment. Hey guys, okay, so we're on to shelf number 2. I'm going to turn around because I have 2 books behind me I just wanted to tell you about. I'm going to pull them at both at the same time. The first one is Our Souls at Night by Kent Haruf. He wrote so many books that just touch my heart. But I remember when I read this book, this is a story of 2 people, I believe they're in their 70s, who wind up meeting each other. They know each other, but the woman asks the man if he'll come over and just sleep with her at night so that she has a companion in her bed. And it is about their relationship and how that develops and how other people view that relationship. This book is heartbreakingly beautiful. I want to say I believe it was Kent's last book that he wrote, and it was, I feel, his masterpiece. It is fantastic. The next book over from that section of the shelves is Where the Dead Sit Talking by Brandon Hobson. This was actually shortlisted for the National Book Award last year, and it was the surprise on the list for me because I had never heard of Brandon Hobson and I had never heard of this book. But this is the story of a young boy, a Native American boy in Oklahoma, in the foster care system because his mother is in prison, and it is just one of those books that opened my world to a different writer, a different place in the United States, a different point of view, and I absolutely loved it, and it really left a lasting impression on me. I'm going to turn around and put these back. The next book I wanted to pull out is, you can't do a bookshelf tour and not talk about Simon Savage and what he has done for my book collection. And that would be The Good People by Hannah Kent. I loved Burial Rites by Hannah Kent, and Simon was super, super nice to send me The Good People all the way from England, signed by Hannah Kent. I can't find the signature. But it was a signed copy of this book, and I was so thankful. He has been so good to me in sending me so many signed books. They're all through here. And this is just one of those authors. I think this was only her second book, and I am a huge fan, and to have one on my shelf is fantastic. Okay, the last book in this section before we move down is actually a book that needs really no introduction, and is actually a book I don't have to tell you much about, but it is completely sentimental, and that is To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. First, this is the edition of Harper Lee's To Kill a Mockingbird that I actually read in 10th grade. This is my 10th grade version. So if you're ever over and you want to pull it off the shelf, you can actually find my handwritten notes in this copy of my very, very educated breakdown of To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. And I will always keep this on my shelf for as long as I have books because of how much and important this book has been in my reading life. But that being said, I at one time found this Barnes & Noble copy of To Kill a Mockingbird, and I absolutely think it is so beautiful, and it has this beautiful purple ribbon in it to mark your place. And so I have two copies of To Kill a Mockingbird, one absolutely sentimental and one just absolutely gorgeous that I cannot not have on my shelf. So I'm going to put these back and we'll move down and we'll talk to you in a minute. Okay guys, second part, shelf 2. There are a lot of books in this part of the shelf that I talk about a lot, but you know why? Because they deserve to be talked about, because they're fantastic. I think I could talk to you again about If You Want to Make God Laugh by Bianca Marius, because let's be honest, I just read it, I loved it, I think it's one of my best books of the year, but I'm not going to because I've done 3 videos on it already. But I'm just going to remind everybody about Ohio by Stephen Markley, which was a debut novel that came out last year that I thought was pitch perfect. It is dark and it is gritty, about a small town in, I want to say northeastern Ohio, don't take my word for that, it's been a while since I've read it, but it is about a group of friends that lives are intersecting. It's about where they went after high school, dreams that were followed, dreams that were dashed. Also, it's a little bit of a mystery about one young woman who disappeared in her senior year and whatever happened to her and how her disappearance affected the lives of these friends. I really love this book. I think that it is fantastic. It's a great debut novel, and it will be on my shelf to remind me every time Stephen Markley has something come out, I need to go pick it up. The next book I was going to tell you about is a little bit further down. Let's see if I can get this one in without making a mess here. And that is Christodora by Tim Murphy. This was actually my favorite read of a couple of years ago now. It is a fantastic look at the AIDS epidemic in New York from a different perspective. It is based in a hotel, or actually not a hotel, it's an apartment building called Christodora, where we have a bunch of different people that their lives intersect. Their lives are all affected by a couple of things. The HIV epidemic in the 80s and sort of goes through time and how that evolves. Also, art is a big piece of all of these lives and how that represents this time period and these people and their connection to one another. There are some real trigger warnings in here. There's drug use and drug overdoses that are a little bit rough to read, so realistic. But I remember just sort of the heart-wrenching terror and or realness that was this book for me. Tim Murphy was actually a journalist that worked on the magazine, the HIV, I want to say HIV AIDS magazine, POZ magazine, Out magazine, and Advocate. He wrote about the epidemic when it was going on, so he definitely had this perspective and this reality that was so real, and I absolutely, utterly loved this book. I've recommended it to many of my friends, and they have also loved it. Next, I can't really go by the shelf and not remind you all of Girls of Paper and Fire by Natasha Ngan, my favorite YA read of last year, hands down. And the reason I'm reminding you is because book 2 comes out in November. I have it on my shelf. I got to meet her. Absolutely loved it. This is a book that I gave to my niece. I loved it so much. A YA fantasy novel that just has queer representation, has strong women defying the odds and doing what they need to do to survive. Loved it, loved it. Loved Natasha Ngan. Loved everything about it. You know I loved it. I talk about it all the time. Okay, last but not least on this shelf is going to be The Tiger's Wife by Thea Obright. And the only reason I'm really going to talk about this is because when I read this years ago, I think it's been, what, 10 years now since this came out? I can't even remember. It came out in 2011, so 8 years now. This was her debut novel. It won the Women's Prize back when it was the Orange Prize, I believe. And it blew my socks off. I gave it to a ton of people. Actually, a coworker of mine read it and absolutely loved it. And all I knew is that I was going to read everything that Thea Obright wrote moving forward. Unfortunately, it's been so long, but next month, her new novel, Inland, I believe, comes out, and I am so excited about it. I got it at Book Expo America. I'm going to be reading it very, very soon. But this book reminds me of what people with talent can do no matter how old they are. And it really sort of inspires me to do things that I'm passionate about, because you never know where it's going to take you. It took her to the Women's Prize. So that's The Tiger's Wife by Thea Obright. Okay, we're going to move down to shelf 3 now. I'll see you in a minute. Okay guys, third and last shelf for this video. We are down here. I actually could probably not be standing so tall. But I thought I would just remind you guys of a book that has sat in my memory since I've read it with such appreciation for its utter brilliance. And that is Girls Burn Brighter by Shobha Rao. I don't know how this wound up on my radar last year, but this is the story of 2 young Indian women and their relationship and some horrible, horrible stuff that they go through, but how they persevere. And I remember when I read this book, I was in tears for so much of it, but I think Shobha Rao is one of the most beautiful writers that I read last year, and this book has utterly stuck with me. And I have recommended it to so many people. I actually have her short story collection, because I bought it after reading this, on my other set of shelves, my TBR shelves, that I need to absolutely get to. But I remember that this book just stuck out in my head for so long. The next book on this list is actually a book that really only came to me because of BookTube. I would not have known about nor read No One Can Pronounce My Name by Rakesh Chattel if I hadn't been a person on BookTube. And I have to think that I need to blame Mr. Matthew Sharapa. That's the wrong word. Thank Matthew Sharapa for introducing me to this book. The story, this is one of those things. It's one of those books that just takes you by the heart. The story of a young Indian mother, she's my age, so I think she's young, whose son has moved out of the house, and she's dealing with empty nest syndrome and the relationship with her husband. A man who is living with his mother after the death of his sister, who pretends to dress up as his sister because he thinks it helps with his mother's grief, but never learns really who he wants to be or what he wants in his own life, giving himself that freedom. I loved this book. I think this cover is absolutely fantastic, and I really, really, really would never have found this book without BookTube, and I would never have followed Rakesh Chattel and his adorable husband on all different forms of social media if it hadn't been for this book. So read it, you will love it, you will cry, you will smile, and you will want to eat a lot of Indian food because it smells delicious. Okay, let's see. I think I'm going to do 2 more in this section, if that's okay. I can't skip by Ali Smith without talking about Autumn, and this is not because I'm going to talk about the book Autumn. I'm going to talk about Kendra Winchester. Kendra Winchester of the Reading Women is the most phenomenal buddy reader you will ever read with if you ever get the chance. She sends spreadsheets, articles, links, videos, everything that you could possibly need. And if you guys have read Ali Smith, you know that you absolutely need all of that to understand her book sometimes. This book was the first book I ever buddy read with Kendra Winchester, and it solidified a friendship that I think will be around for ages to come. So Ali Smith sits right here, so happy for Kendra, so happy that I read it, and I'm so happy to have it on my shelf. And last but not least in this section is going to be my favorite short story collection of all time, one that I read last year and raved about, and that's Heads of the Colored People by Nafisa Thompson Spires. This book was also longlisted for the National Book Award last year, and thank goodness I read that whole list because it introduced me to so many books. But I think, from my humble opinion, that this is a perfect short story collection. I did not think there was a misstep in it. I felt something in every story. She broke my heart. She made me laugh. She made me think. Everything that you need to do in a short story collection. And yeah, I highly recommend reading it. It is out in paperback now. The paperback is also absolutely beautiful. And if you have a chance, please read it. Talk to me about it. I will gladly gush with you. And that's Heads of the Colored People by Nafisa Thompson Spires. Okay, guys, we're going to move down and do the last part of this shelf, and book tour video number 1 will be done. Let's go. Okay, guys, we're in the final haul. We're on the last shelf, third shelf, last set of books I'm going to tell you about. And actually, I may tell you about some of the stuff that's on the shelves this time, too. I thought I'm going to have to reach a little bit for this one, but I know that this book did not need really any introduction. This is Flights by Olga. I'm going to hold her name up there because you know that my Polish is weak. This won the Man Booker International Prize, which is now just the Booker Prize. I read this book. It came out from Riverhead. I think this is one of those books that's very hard to talk about. It is so smart and beautiful and tackles so many topics that it is one of those things that I at times didn't know if I was understanding, but at times thought, gosh, this is pure and utter brilliance. This was translated from the Polish by Jennifer Croft, and Jennifer actually has her own memoir coming out in the next few months from Unnamed Press called Homesick, I believe, which I am dying to get my hands on. And also, I believe she was just announced that she's going to be one of the judges for the Booker International Prize for next year. So I'm Facebook friends with her, so I feel by association I'm utterly famous, right? That's how this works. But this book reminds me of Jennifer, her utter kindness, and also just how amazing it is to read books from other countries and how lucky we are when they get translated into English when we can't read Polish. The next book, I'm stretching to put it back real quick, I want to tell you about is The Third Hotel by Laura Vandenberg. And the reason that this is on my shelf is because this one reminds me that sometimes you just read weird books and you love them and you can't explain why. The story of a woman who goes to Cuba for a horror film festival to celebrate her husband who has died, only to find her husband in Cuba and not know what that actually means. I still, to this day, could not tell you how this book ends. It is so crazy, but I loved every single page of it. I remember reading Roxane Gay's review of it, and she's saying, I don't know what happened at the end. And I was like, Roxane, I don't know what happened at the end either. But I loved it, and I want everyone to read it. I also think the cover is really, really cool. Okay, putting this one back real quick. A little bit more nonfiction for you. I used to be in a book club ages ago. That was a bunch of non-readers. They were all scientists, actually, and they wanted to read more, so we started a book club. And one of the books that we read in that was The Warmth of Other Suns, The Epic Story of America's Great Migration by Isabel Wilkerson. It went on to win the Pulitzer Prize. This is a nonfiction book about the Great Migration of the African-American community from the South, North, and West. This book, it really follows a number of people, sort of gives you their own story, as also telling you sort of the history and the figures and the facts of how many people migrated out of the South looking for different things across the United States. I want to say, was it from 1937? I want to say, oh, from 1915 to 1970, 6 million people wound up moving around the country. I remember that this is one of those nonfiction books that's utterly readable, utterly fantastic, utterly fascinating. And I have recommended it to a number of people, and I highly recommend, oh my gosh, the pages are bent. How did that happen? Audiobook. If you are looking for a historical audiobook, this may be one that you want to read. And that's The Warmth of Other Suns, The Epic Story of America's Great Migration by Isabel Wilkerson. I don't know what she's working on next, but I will read it. It's freaking brilliant. The last book that I wanted to tell you about before we go on to maybe a couple of items is Putney by Sofka Zenovev. This book came out last year from Harper, and I remember when I got it and started reading it, I knew it was going to be controversial. It deals with sort of an older man and a young woman's relationship, and it goes back and forth with really her now as a 50-year-old woman coming to terms with what happened in her youth, and also reminiscing on what the relationship meant to her. I may have said that. A 50-year-old woman meant to her when she was 13, sorry. And it also has another character, a best friend from her youth, that has sort of a different reason for being involved and what they wind up doing. It is so good and so thought-provoking and so amazing, and I really want more people to read it. It's a tough book. It deals with tough subject matter, but it's also one of those books that is beautifully written and tells an amazing, amazing story. So that's Putney by Safka Zenovev, and that is the last book I'm going to tell you about. I thought I would tell you guys just briefly about this amazing piece of art here. This, as you can see, is a book that has been folded into, I hope that you can see it on screen. Every year at Christmas and Valentine's Day, my husband and I have what we call a gentle competition for who wins the holiday, who buys the right gifts, who wins birthdays, who wins these. This was one gift that he got me. I want to say it was a Christmas present. Yeah, I think it was a Christmas present. And with this gift, he believed he won Christmas. Now, it's pretty fantastic. I know you've seen it on my shelves forever. I always win, but you know, we'll give him this benefit of the doubt. So this is just an amazing thing. I know he got it from someone who folds these pages so it creates words. And it's one of my favorite pieces of art here in my library. The last thing I was going to tell you about, and I'm hoping, I'm going to have to hold up these books while, this piece of artwork here was given to me by a woman who worked for me years and years ago. She still works with me, but no longer for me. I had a cat named Cheska who passed away from a heart attack. It was horrible. And when she heard that, she made me this vase to put Cheska in. I never wound up putting Cheska in this vase, but I have always thought of someone making art when you are in a time of utter need has always had a special place in my heart. And this has been on my bookshelf since it was given to me. And I want to say it's been like 10 years or so, maybe more, since I've had it. But every time I see it, I think of the kindness of that person. So Barb, I know you don't watch these videos, but if you just happen to watch this one, thank you. I'll always have this, and it will always remind me of you. Okay, so that is all 3 shelves, and I hope you liked it. We're going to do a couple more videos to get through the rest of these. But as always, if you are a return subscriber to my channel, well, thank you. I can't do this without you, and I know a lot of you really wanted to see a bookshelf tour. I hope that this is getting that need for you. If you are new to my channel, I hope you stick around. Listen to me talk about books. I love to do it. And until next time, I wish you happy reading, and I'll see you soon. Bye! Hey guys, so if you can't tell, this is a new type of video for me, actually, where we have edited some different things into it, and it is a different sort of style and format. So let me know what you think in the comments down below. Did you like it? Should I do more videos like this? Do you like this bookshelf tour? Tell me all about it in the comments below. Talk to you soon.